this past Thursday we had the Feast of the Transfiguration, and as you will remember, Jesus meets on the mountain there with two figures, which is Moses and Elijah. And both of now we have the first reading today from 1 Kings chapter 19, which is about Elijah going into the desert. Now, we don't know exactly what the reason is. It could be at least three reasons, and I think the third reason is probably the point of this passage. The first reason may be that he was frightened because he had gone up against the prophets of Baal just before this, and Queen Jezebel had sworn that she was going to kill Elijah for doing that. So it may be that he was afraid and ran into the desert for that reason. Or he may have been burned out. It was like, I've done what you asked me to do, God, my whole life. I've been doing all this, and I'm not achieving anything. So it might have been a kind of burnout, depression from that. Or the third one, and this is probably what the reason actually was, is that he goes, as you can see the last phrase here, he goes to Horeb, the Mount of God. And so it's that he's going back, in a sense, he's going back to the roots of the faith of the Hebrew people. That's where Moses, after he fled, after he had killed the Egyptian god, he fled into the desert near this place, Horeb. And this is where he met God. This is where God gave him his calling. This is where eventually, when he brought the Israelites out of Egypt into the desert, it was back to this mountain, and there was the law was given. So it's as if this desert, in a way, is a sacred place, a holy place. And so Elijah is going into it in order to meet with God again. And he is like Moses was fed with the children of Israel with miraculous food in the desert. So Elijah is fed with miraculous food in the desert, and he's going back to meet with God. So the desert, it's so the implication here is that it's not only the manna that is the presence of God and the miraculous feeding from God, but the desert as well is a place where Elijah and Moses and the children of Israel are nurtured by God. The desert, and I think the desert in our own lives, obviously we run away from it. We do not want to have to deal with suffering in our lives at all. Nobody likes that. We're not masochistic. Nobody enjoys suffering. But it may be that the desert in our lives, in whatever way that appears to us, is the place in which that part of our lives, in which it was the worst part of the desert that we had to come through, or will come through, or are going through at this moment, may not be so horrifying. It may be a sacred place in which God meets with us. People often say that about disease in hospital, don't they? It's not something they would wish on anybody, but somehow it was a time that they had to come face to face with God in their lives. And I saw, I just read two books that touched on this a little bit. One was the story of Frederick Douglass, who in his book Giants, Frederick Douglass was along the parallel life of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. And there was a time he in an earlier part of his life was enslaved and cruelly treated Frederick Douglass, and then at some point escaped or earned his freedom. I think actually earned his freedom. But then the slave owners came to hunt for him again when he was here in Massachusetts. I understand that he landed at New Bedford at that time. And then he went to Britain. And so he was actually being sought to be put back into slavery. I mean, it's a horrible kind kind of picture, terrible kind of situation. So he was in Britain, but then he thought he had to come back. This was the time of the Civil War, the time that America was struggling with this whole issue. And he went down to see Abraham Lincoln, and then shortly after that was finally Lincoln made that the Emancipation Proclamation. Incredibly important moment for the United States. So it's like at his most vulnerable time, this is the point that I'm saying, it's Frederick Douglass' most vulnerable time of his life, you could say a desert, that he's been hunted again. And he comes back into it and follows this calling that he has to bring this country through to a different place. And I have another book there, which was also picked up on the theme. But just in brief, it's really our time of struggle, our time of emptiness. If you feel that you're in a desert of some kind in your own life, that there's some place that this has never been worse than something you're having to go through. There may be something sacred about it. There may be, if you can look like Elijah, like Moses, to God, that the living bread is going to be in it for you. If you will then, maybe the time is going to come that you look back on this moment, as we can with Frederick Douglass, for example, and say that was a holy moment, and extremely the best part of his life, the most important thing he ever did, maybe in us and our lives too. So if you have that desert, if you feel thirsty, if you feel like, am I going to survive this? Be looking to Jesus Christ in faith. Be looking for his guidance. I don't know how it comes. You don't know how it comes. Nobody knows how it comes. Moses didn't know how it would come. Elijah didn't know. We don't know. But somehow God's power comes through it. And it becomes the most important part of our life. In the name of Christ. Amen.